I want to show you something. This is the endocrine system. This is the endocrine system. So you see it goes all the way down the body, and there's many different parts of it. So you see the ovaries in there. You'll see the testes in there. You'll see the pancreas, the kidneys. Right on top of the kidneys, there's the adrenal gland. You've got your thymus gland. Ooh, let's talk about that at some point. That's a mysterious one. You've got your thyroid gland. And then up in the brain, you've got your HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary axis, as well as the pineal gland, which is considered part of the endocrine system. So when you say endocrine system, it's sort of like, well, what do you mean? Like, can you define it? So I just did. Now, I want to add to that because the thing about the endocrine system in me is that over the last 13 years of exploring this and understanding this in clinic is there are something that I like to call neuroendocrine hormones that are not actually on this chart, the neuroendocrine hormones. I consider those to be things like serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin. So that also has to come into consideration when we're looking at the endocrine system. But you know what else is not on that? Melatonin. It's hard to put melatonin on a chart like this. It comes from the brain. That's for our circadian rhythm, right? That's for our sleep cycles. And so let's take a look at this humongous world that exists within us, because every piece of that world is interconnected. It's almost like, I almost want to compare it to the solar system, because we all know the solar system, right? We have the sun, we have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, etc., etc., etc. And they all kind of orbit around the sun, right? So consider that brain area, the HPA axis, consider that to be the sun within our own solar system orbit that happens within our body. So let's look at the endocrine system from a place of, okay, things are orbiting around each other. Maybe that's a fresh look at why you might have some energy problems or some metabolism problems or some body temperature problems or some circulation problems or some anxiety or depression, the blues, apathy. Let's take a look. So moving on to I'm going to start with the adrenals. That's a good place to start, right? The adrenals. The most complicated one, let's start with that. Because, as many of us know, the adrenals produce a hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is known as our stress hormone. So when people talk about stress hormones, that's cortisol, okay? The adrenals. They sit on top of the kidneys, right? Adrenal, renal, that's kidney, okay? There's little hints in the words. So, you've got two parts to your adrenal gland. Okay, are you following? Your adrenaline, which is in the adrenal medulla. And then you've got your cortisol, your other stress hormone, which is in the adrenal cortex. Okay, so what does cortisol do? Well, that is produced when the body is of the opinion that we are not in a thriving state. Okay, the cortisol is of the opinion that we're not necessarily in a thriving state in the moment. Cortisol takes a lot of energy and nutrients for the body to produce. Okay, it's a very high energy molecule. And that energy is produced from the body's stores of energy and nutrients, okay, to materialize a cortisol molecule. All right, so as we produce cortisol, because we're under stress of some sort, at least in the body's opinion. See, here's the thing. We might not feel stressed, or we might just sort of, yeah, I do feel stressed. My body feels stressed. I can't relax adequately. Even when I am supposed to be relaxed, I don't really feel 100% relaxed. I have a hard time getting to sleep at night. I'm restless. I'm tired all day, and then I get a second wind when I get home. I'm wound up a lot. I'll just be sitting in my desk, or I'll just be hanging out relaxing, and I'll sweat. My armpits will be soaked. I wonder if I'm heading into menopause. Or I wonder if something else is going on. Do I have hyperhidrosis? Is my testosterone too high? Am I reacting to a medication? These are some things that we look at when we start to have an increase in body temperature and then a sweat, a heat flush, I call it. It's not a hot flash, it's heat flush. And the reason why the first thing I said was menopause was because adrenal problems will come up more commonly as we enter menopause as women. But let me tell you, adrenal fatigue happens in men just as often. It shows up differently. And oftentimes we don't really know why, and so we don't really know what to say to our doctor to say, well, I'm sweating a lot, more than usual. I just through the day. You know, it's easy for a woman to say that because they can blame it on something. Oh, even if you're 40, even if you're in their 30s, well, maybe I'm having early menopause, and it gets you into the doctor's office, right? Maybe it's adrenal fatigue. Maybe our body has been producing a lot of cortisol, and we're getting tired of it. Literally, we're getting tired of producing cortisol. We're starting to get symptoms. We're jittery. We want a coffee, but then we're all sweaty and jittery, and it's not really working like it used to, and we just can't settle, not properly, and our brain just will not shut off. Our brain just runs and runs and runs, because let me tell you, cortisol has quite the personality. Cortisol is an activating hormone. That's our warrior hormone. That's what gets cortisol and adrenaline gets produced when we have to go into battle. All right. Now, not everyone's going into battle in a way that you'd think, right? It's not like we're putting on a bunch of gear and picking up a sword and a shield and going out like our ancestors did. That's one reason why we go into state of fight or flight and use our adrenals to power up, to warrior up, to get something done. Nowadays, there's a lot of other stuff going on. In fact, verbally and in the written word, on our computer, in our email, in our discussions with colleagues, in meetings, in casual conversation, at home with the kids, with our spouse, in a very high intense, can I perform adequately lifestyle that we've all been pushed into by society. Society taxes our adrenals, and it's up to us to create boundaries around that. But in the meantime, first we have to recognize there's a problem. First we need to recognize I'm producing a lot of cortisol, and I've been producing a lot of cortisol for the last 9 months, or 12 months, or 14 months, or 3 years. Okay, now I've looked at it. I think I'm producing too much cortisol. I think I might have a bit of adrenal fatigue. What do I do about it? Well, let's talk about that next time. Stay tuned. I won't make you wait too long. Keep checking on my social media. You'll find the next video soon.